The news hit Earth like a meteor strike. Every television, radio, and computer screen carried the same message. Humanity had been rejected by the galactic community and locked away in their own solar system like prisoners. President Maria Rodriguez watched the reports from her office in Geneva as protests erupted in cities around the world. Some people demanded war against the aliens. Others wanted to accept the quarantine and focus on problems at home. But most people felt something they had never experienced before. The entire human race had been told they were not good enough to join the galaxy's civilized species. Maria called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Council. Representatives from every nation and space colony gathered in the Great Assembly Hall. The debates were angry and loud. General Frank Parker wanted to build a military fleet and force their way into galactic society. Senator Claire Johnson argued that humans should respect the quarantine and prove they could be peaceful. But it was Dr. Lisa Carter who changed everything. 3 weeks after returning from Zentara Prime, she requested time to address the council. She walked to the podium carrying a single tablet, her face calm but determined. "Fellow humans," she began, "we have been told we have no place in their galaxy. I agree with them." The hall erupted in angry shouts, but Lisa continued. "We have no place in their galaxy because we don't belong in their galaxy. We belong in our own galaxy." The shouting stopped as people tried to understand what she meant. Lisa touched her tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the assembly hall. It showed the Milky Way galaxy with all its billions of stars, then zoomed out to show the nearby galaxy clusters. "Project Genesis," she announced. "We cannot expand in their galaxy, so we will not expand in their galaxy. Instead, we will build our own galaxy from scratch." Engineer Alex Thompson stood up from his seat, his voice shaking with disbelief. "The energy requirements would be impossible. Moving even one star would take more power than our entire civilization produces." Lisa smiled. "Then we learn to produce more power. We build Dyson spheres around stars to capture all their energy. We construct stellar engines to move stars wherever we want them. We become the greatest engineers in the universe." Dr. Kevin Matthews, Earth's leading physicist, raised his hand. "Even if we could move stars, where would we put them? And how? Would we organize an entire galaxy?" The holographic display changed to show an empty region of space 3 million light-years away, far beyond the reach of the coalition. "Here," Lisa said, "in the void between galaxy clusters where no one claims territory and no one will bother us while we work," terraforming expert Amanda Foster called out from the back of the hall. "You're talking about moving millions of stars and creating billions of worlds. It would take thousands of years. It would take about 200 years with the right technology, and enough determination," Lisa replied. "We start by moving small stars, then work our way up to larger ones. Each star we move teaches us how to move the next one better and faster." The hall fell silent as people began to understand the scope of what Lisa was proposing. They would not just build cities or terraform planets. They would literally construct an entire galaxy, choosing where every star would shine and where every world would orbit. Admiral Patricia Hayes, the highest-ranking military officer on Earth, stood up slowly. "The coalition will never let us do this. They'll see it as a threat and attack us before we can finish." "That's why we go far away," Lisa explained. "By the time they notice what we're doing, we'll be too far away for them to stop us easily. And by the time they decide to act, we'll be strong enough to defend ourselves." President Rodriguez asked the question everyone was thinking. "Dr. Carter, what you're proposing is beyond anything humans have ever attempted. Are you certain it's possible?" Lisa looked around the hall at the faces of humanity's leaders. She saw fear, doubt, and anger, but also something else: hope. 50 years ago, faster-than-light travel was impossible. 100 years ago, fusion. Power was a dream. 500 years ago, flying was magic. Humans have always done impossible things. This is just the biggest impossible thing we've ever attempted. The debates continued for hours. Engineers argued about stellar mechanics and energy requirements. Politicians worried about cost and resources. Military leaders discussed defense strategies. But slowly, the impossible idea began to seem possible. Dr. Carter presented detailed plans that she had been working on since the day they left Zentara Prime. She showed them how to build machines that could grip entire stars with magnetic fields. She explained how to construct artificial worlds in any size and shape they wanted. She demonstrated how a carefully arranged galaxy could be both beautiful and defensible. Alex Thompson began to see how it could work. We'd need to start with brown dwarf stars. They're easier to move and don't produce dangerous radiation. Once we master moving those, we can work up to main sequence stars like our sun. Dr. Matthews added his expertise. The gravitational calculations would be incredibly complex, but with quantum computers, we could design stable orbits for millions of star systems. Amanda Foster started planning the terraforming projects. We could build worlds specifically designed for different purposes: agricultural worlds, industrial worlds, research stations, recreational planets. Each one perfect for its job. As the discussion continued, the vision became clearer. Humanity would not just move stars randomly. They would design their galaxy like a vast garden, with each star placed for maximum beauty and efficiency. Trade routes would follow carefully planned paths. Defensive positions would be built into the galaxy's very structure. The vote was close, but Project Genesis was approved. Earth would commit all of its resources to the greatest construction project in history. Every human settlement, from the lunar colonies to the mining stations around Jupiter, would contribute materials and workers. Lisa was appointed director of Project Genesis. Alex Thompson became chief engineer. Dr. Matthews led the stellar mechanics team. Amanda Foster took charge of world-building operations. Admiral Hayes commanded the defense forces that would protect the construction sites. The first ships launched within 6 months. Massive factory vessels carried the equipment needed to build stellar engines. Construction crews began the long journey to the target region where humanity's new galaxy would take shape. Scout ships went ahead to map empty space and choose the best locations for the first star systems. Jake Morrison volunteered to command the advance fleet. He had been changed by the rejection at Zentara Prime, and now he wanted to be part of proving the aliens wrong. As his ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, heading for empty space 3 million light-years from Earth, he thought about the magnitude of what they were attempting. They were going to build a galaxy. Not conquer one, not discover one, but actually construct one from nothing. They would gather stars from across the universe and arrange them in patterns that had never existed before. They would create worlds that would be home to trillions of humans who had not yet been born. The coalition had said humans had no place in the stars, but humans were about to create their own stars, their own worlds, their own place in the universe. It would take centuries of backbreaking work and incredible sacrifice. Many people would spend their entire lives working on projects they would never see completed. But for the first time since the rejection, humanity had hope again. They had a goal that was worthy of their ambitions. They would show the galaxy what humans could accomplish when they were told something was impossible. The age of human expansion had begun, and it would end with humanity ruling not just star systems or sectors, but an entire galaxy built with their own hands. The aliens who had rejected them would eventually look across the void of space and see the lights of 1 million human worlds, arranged in patterns more beautiful than anything nature had ever created. Project Genesis was more than a construction project. It was humanity's declaration that they would never again ask permission to reach for the stars. 25 years had passed since the coalition rejected humanity, and the empty region of space that humans now called the Genesis Zone had become the busiest construction site in the universe. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his command ship and watched thousands of vessels working together to move their 15th star into position. The star was a red dwarf, smaller and cooler than Earth's sun, but perfect for the agricultural worlds that would orbit it. Jake watched as the massive stellar engines fired their gravitational beams, slowly pushing the star along its calculated path. The engines were as large as moons, built from materials gathered from dead worlds scattered across the galaxy. Chief Engineer Alex Thompson's voice came through the communication system from his position near the stellar engines. "Admiral, we're on schedule. The star should reach its final position in 36 hours. The planetary construction crews are all ready. Waiting. Jake nodded and switched his view to the holographic display that showed their progress. Where once there had been empty space, now 17 star systems sparkled in carefully planned arrangements. Each star was exactly where it needed to be, creating a foundation for the galaxy that humanity was building. Dr. Lisa Carter, now director of Project Genesis, appeared on the communication screen from her command center on the construction station, New Terra 1. Her hair had turned gray during the years of constant work, but her eyes still burned with determination. Jake, how are the gravity well calculations looking? Perfect, Jake replied. Kevin's team has outdone themselves. The new stars are creating exactly the gravitational effects we need for the next phase. Dr. Kevin Matthews had become the greatest expert on stellar mechanics in human history. His quantum computers could calculate the gravitational interactions between millions of stars, ensuring that humanity's galaxy would be stable for billions of years. His team had learned to predict how moving one star would affect all the others, allowing them to build their galaxy with mathematical precision. The work was incredibly dangerous. 3 months ago, the crew of the stellar transport Pacific Dawn had been lost when their ship was caught in an unstable gravity field created by a star that was moving too fast. 2 weeks before that, a construction crew working on a Dyson sphere around a yellow star had been killed when the star's magnetic field suddenly shifted. But for every crew that was lost, 100 more volunteered to take their place. Humans, from every world and space station in the solar system, had come to the Genesis Zone to be part of the greatest project in history. They worked in shifts around the clock, never stopping, never slowing down. Linda Parker ran the fusion specialist teams that powered the stellar engines. Her crews worked inside the engines themselves, maintaining the fusion reactors that generated enough energy to move entire stars. The work was hot, dangerous, and exhausting, but Linda's teams took pride in keeping the engines running smoothly. Navigation Officer Chris Johnson had the job of plotting courses for the stars as they moved through space. His calculations had to account for the gravitational effects of nearby galaxies, the motion of the galaxy cluster itself, and the interactions between all the stars they were moving. One small mistake could send a star careening into another star, destroying both. The construction of artificial worlds had become an art form. Mining coordinator Danny Miller oversaw teams that gathered raw materials from asteroids and dead planets, while agricultural director Amy Richardson designed worlds that would be perfect for growing food. Each artificial world was built to exact specifications: the right size, the right gravity, the right atmosphere, the right distance from its star. The habitat rings that surrounded many of the stars were marvels of engineering. These massive structures captured all the energy that their stars produced, using it to power the construction equipment and provide electricity for the growing human population in the Genesis Zone. Some of the rings were so large that Earth could have fit inside them with room to spare. Jake received a report from one of the deep space scouts who had been exploring the edges of known space, looking for suitable stars to move to the Genesis Zone. Captain Nicole Brooks commanded a fast exploration ship that could travel farther and faster than any other vessel in the human fleet. Admiral, Nicole's voice came through the long-range communicator. We've found a cluster of young blue giants about 15 light-years from our target area. They're perfect for the high-energy industrial zone that Dr. Carter wants to build. How long to move them? Jake asked. With our current equipment, about 3 years for all 6 stars, but they'll provide enough energy to power the construction of 50 more artificial worlds. Jake approved the mission and watched as Nicole's ship headed toward the blue giants. Moving the larger, more energetic stars required bigger stellar engines and more careful planning. But humanity had learned to move stars the way their ancestors had learned to move mountains. The population of the Genesis Zone had grown to over 2 million people. Construction workers lived on massive space stations that moved between the work sites. Families made their homes on the first artificial worlds that had been completed. Children were being born who would grow up watching new stars appear in their sky as humanity continued building their galaxy. Dr. Carter called a meeting of the senior staff to discuss the next phase of construction. Jake, Alex, Kevin, Linda, Danny, and Amy gathered in the conference room of New Terra 1 to look at the plans for expanding their galaxy. "We've proven that we can move stars and build worlds," Lisa said, as she displayed their progress on the holographic projector. "Now we need to think about defense. The Coalition will eventually notice what we're doing." Admiral Hayes had retired, and Jake now commanded all military forces in the Genesis Zone. "We've been thinking about that," he said. "The galaxy we're building can be both beautiful and defensible. If we position the stars correctly, we can create gravity wells that will trap enemy fleets." Alex nodded. "The stellar engines can be converted to weapons if necessary. A beam that can move a star can certainly destroy a spaceship." Kevin added, "We can also design some of the artificial worlds as fortresses, planets covered with defensive weapons, positioned at strategic points throughout the galaxy." Linda suggested, "Using the Dyson sphere construction techniques to build massive weapons platforms that would orbit the most important stars." Danny proposed turning some of the asteroid mining operations into automated weapon factories. Amy, whose job was usually creating beautiful garden worlds, surprised everyone by suggesting that they could design entire star systems as traps for enemy fleets. "We could create what looks like a normal system but actually have the planets positioned to create killing zones for our weapons." As they planned their defenses, Jake thought about how much humanity had changed. 25 years ago they had been rejected by the galactic community for being too violent and chaotic. Now they were planning to turn an entire galaxy into a fortress that could defend itself against any enemy. But they were also creating something beautiful. The artificial worlds that Amy designed were more lovely than any natural planet. The star patterns that Kevin calculated created views from space that took people's breath away. The habitat rings that surrounded their stars gleamed like jewelry against the darkness. A message arrived from Earth with news that made everyone smile. President Rodriguez announced that Earth's population had voted to join their families in down the Genesis Zone. The entire human race was going to move to their new galaxy, leaving Earth as a monument to their origins, but making their future among the stars they had arranged with their own hands. Jake looked out at the construction zone, where thousands of humans worked together on the greatest project in history. They were no longer the species that had been rejected by the Coalition. They had become something new, master builders who could reshape space itself according to their will. The Coalition had said humans were too violent and chaotic to deserve a place among the stars. But as Jake watched another star slide gracefully into its planned position, he knew that humans had found something better than a place among the stars. They had learned to build their own stars and arrange them however they chose. In 50 more years, their galaxy would be complete. It would be home to billions of humans powered by hundreds of stars that humans had personally selected and positioned. It would be the most beautiful and most defensible galaxy in the universe, and it would be entirely human. Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the starship New Horizon and watched the stars grow brighter as they moved through space faster than light itself. His hands gripped the metal rail as he thought about what lay ahead. After 300 years of dreaming about meeting other intelligent life, humanity was finally going to knock on the door of the galaxy's biggest club. The ship hummed quietly around him as it carried Earth's first diplomatic team toward Zentera Prime, the capital world of the Galactic Coalition. Jake had spent 20 years in space, but this mission felt different. Everything humanity had worked for led to this moment. Dr. Lisa Carter walked up beside him, her tablet showing data about the 12 alien races they were about to meet. She was the smartest person Jake knew, and if anyone could impress the aliens with human science, it would be her. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style, and her brown eyes showed both excitement and worry. "The translation programs are working perfectly," she said in her calm voice. "We should be able to talk to all 12 species without any problems." Commander Ryan Walsh joined them at the viewing window. He had been Earth's best diplomat for 15 years, and his job was to convince the aliens that humans deserved a place in their galactic community. His gray suit was perfectly pressed, and he carried a briefcase filled with documents that told the story of human civilization. "Remember," Ryan said, "we're not just representing Earth. We're representing every human who ever looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. The New Horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel, and suddenly Zentara Prime filled their view. The planet was unlike anything they had ever seen. Huge cities covered its surface, connected by bridges that stretched between floating islands. Ships from dozens of different worlds moved through the sky like birds. Jake felt his heart beat faster as they approached the massive space station where the Galactic Coalition held their meetings. The station was bigger than Earth's moon, with docking bays that could hold thousands of ships. As they got closer, they could see the different styles of alien ships. Some were smooth and curved, others were made of what looked like living crystal, and some seemed to be made of pure energy. Their ship was guided to a small docking bay by invisible forces. Jake, Lisa, and Ryan walked down the boarding ramp carrying humanity's gifts for the Coalition. They had brought examples of human art, music recordings, scientific discoveries, and philosophical writings. Everything that made humans special was packed in the cases they carried. The docking bay was filled with strange sights and sounds. Alien beings moved around them. Some walked on legs like humans, others floated through the air, and some seemed to be made of living metal. The air itself shimmered with translation fields that would help everyone understand each other. A tall, thin alien with blue skin and forearms approached them. His voice came through the translation system as smooth and professional. "Welcome to Zentara Prime. I am Diplomatic Aide Veltar. The Council will see you now." They followed Veltar through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. The walls showed pictures of the 12 Coalition member species and their greatest achievements. Jake saw cities that floated in gas-giant atmospheres, artificial worlds built around stars, and space elevators that reached from planets to their moons. Everything was bigger and more advanced than anything humans had built. The council chamber was enormous, with representatives from all 12 species arranged in a circle. At the center stood a platform where Jake, Lisa, and Ryan were told to wait. The chamber filled with sounds that the translation system turned into words, but Jake could hear the alien voices underneath. Some musical, some harsh, some that sounded like wind through metal. Council speaker Zeth Kalar was a being made of living crystal that changed colors as it spoke. Its voice through the translator was cold and emotionless. "Humans of Earth, you have requested membership in the Galactic Coalition. Present your case." Ryan stepped forward and began his prepared speech. He talked about human history, about how humans had overcome wars and disease and environmental problems. He spoke about human art and music, about their scientific discoveries, and about their dreams of exploring the galaxy in peace. Lisa showed them examples of human technology, fusion power, quantum computers, medical advances that had eliminated most diseases. She explained human philosophy and ethics, trying to show that humans could be trusted with advanced technology. But as they spoke, Jake noticed something wrong. Some of the alien representatives were making sounds that the translator turned into what seemed like laughter. Others were not even paying attention. One delegate was clearly sleeping. When the presentations were finished, the chamber fell silent. Then Zeth Kalar spoke again, and Jake felt his heart sink as the words came through. The translator: "Your species shows promise in some areas," the crystal being said, "but you have fundamental flaws that make you unsuitable for coalition membership. You are too violent, too unpredictable, too chaotic. Your history is filled with wars between your own kind. You destroy your own environment for short-term gain. You cannot even unite your own world under a single government." Another delegate, a being that looked like a cloud of gas held together by energy fields, added its voice. "Your technology is primitive. Your social development is thousands of years behind the minimum standards. You have no place among civilized species." Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but Ryan remained calm and professional. "Honored delegates, every species has had growing pains. Humans have learned from their mistakes. We offer our unique perspective and our determination to contribute to galactic civilization." But Zeth Kalar's response crushed their hopes completely. "The coalition has voted. Your application for membership is denied. Furthermore, your species is now classified as quarantined. You are forbidden from establishing colonies outside your solar system. You are forbidden from interfering in galactic affairs. You will remain in your system until you prove you are worthy of joining civilized society." The chamber erupted in sounds that needed no translation, approval from most delegates, with a few voices that might have been protest. But the decision was final. Jake, Lisa, and Ryan were escorted back to their ship in silence. As the New Horizon left Zentara Prime behind, they sat in the main cabin staring at each other. Everything they had worked for, everything humanity had dreamed of, had been rejected. 300 years of dreaming, Ryan said quietly. And they tell us we don't belong. Lisa looked out the window at the stars that had suddenly become forbidden territory. They think we're too violent, too primitive, too chaotic. Jake stood up and walked to the window. His reflection stared back at him against the backdrop of stars that humans were now banned from reaching. He thought about all the humans back on Earth who were waiting for news, all the children who dreamed of exploring the galaxy, all the scientists who wanted to learn from alien civilizations. "They say we have no place in their galaxy," he said, his voice growing stronger. "Fine, then we'll make our own place." The New Horizon turned toward Earth, carrying news that would change humanity forever. The aliens had made their position clear. Humans were not welcome in their galaxy. But Jake Morrison was already thinking about what humans could do when the universe told them no. They had always been good at proving people wrong. The emergency session of the Galactic Coalition Council had been going on for 3 days, and the debates were getting more heated every hour. Council Speaker Zeth Kalar stood at the center of the great chamber, his crystalline body flashing with angry red colors as he addressed the assembled delegates from 12 different worlds. "The quarantined species has violated every principle of galactic stability." His translator converted his crystal song into words that filled the chamber. "They are moving entire star systems. They are reshaping space itself. This cannot be allowed to continue." The Vorthak delegation, led by Crystal Lord Menthar, pulsed with agreement. "Our deep space observers report that the humans have moved over 200 stars from their natural positions. The gravitational effects are already being felt in nearby galaxy clusters. They threaten the stability of the entire region." But not all the delegates agreed that immediate action was necessary. Ambassador Yelthara of the Cetacean Collective, a species that lived in the gas layers of their homeworld, spoke in opposition. "The humans are building in empty space far from any coalition territory. They are not threatening our worlds directly." The Nebulon representative, a being of organized gas and energy, added its voice. "Perhaps we underestimated this species. The scale of engineering they have accomplished suggests intelligence and determination that we did not recognize before." Crystal Lord Menthar's response was swift and angry. "Intelligence used for destruction. They are proof that violent species cannot be trusted with advanced technology. If we allow this to continue, what prevents other primitive species from attempting similar projects?" Meanwhile, in the Genesis Zone 3 million light-years away, humanity faced its own crisis. Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of New Terra 1, reading the report that had just arrived from their long-range scouts. The Coalition had finally noticed their construction project, and they were not happy about it. Dr. Lisa. Carter joined him at the tactical display, her face grim as she studied the information. "How long do we have before they arrive?" "Captain Brooks estimates 6 months if they send a small force, 3 months if they commit their full military," Jake replied. "Either way, they'll have overwhelming numbers." Alex Thompson looked up from the engineering console where he had been calculating defensive options. "The stellar engines weren't designed as weapons, but we can modify them. A beam that can move a star can certainly destroy a spaceship." Dr. Kevin Matthews shook his head. "The power requirements would shut down all other construction for the duration of any battle, and we'd need at least a month to modify the engines for combat use." Jake activated the galaxy-wide communication system to address all the humans working throughout the Genesis Zone. His image appeared on screens in construction ships, habitat rings, artificial worlds, and space stations scattered across their developing galaxy. "Fellow humans," he began, We have received word that the Galactic Coalition is sending a military force to stop our construction project. They claim we are threatening galactic stability by moving stars from their natural positions. The response was immediate and unanimous from every work site, every ship, every artificial world. The message came back the same. Humanity would not stop building their galaxy. Chief Engineer Thompson took charge of converting their construction equipment into weapon systems. The massive stellar engines that moved stars could be redirected to create devastating energy beams. The gravitational manipulators used to position planets could create gravity wells that would trap enemy ships. Mining coordinator Danny Miller began converting the asteroid mining operations into weapons factories. The same machines that carved up asteroids to build artificial worlds could produce missiles and defensive platforms. Within weeks, the Genesis Zone was bristling with improvised weapons. Agricultural Director Amy Richardson surprised everyone by volunteering to help design defensive systems. "I know how to create perfect environments," she said. "Now I'll learn how to create perfect killing grounds." The artificial worlds that had been built as homes and farms were quickly modified with defensive weapons and shield generators. The beautiful garden worlds that Amy had designed became fortresses that could defend themselves from any attack. Captain Nicole Brooks commanded the human fleet of military ships, though they were vastly outnumbered by what the Coalition was sending. Her flagship Defiance led a force of 200 vessels against a Coalition fleet that intelligence reports estimated at over 3,000 ships. "We can't match their numbers," Nicole reported to Jake during a strategy meeting. "But we know our galaxy better than they do. Every star is exactly where we put it. Every planet is positioned according to our plans. We can use that knowledge." The Coalition fleet arrived exactly when the scouts had predicted. Fleet Admiral Zeltoth commanded the massive armada from his flagship Cosmic Dominion, a ship larger than some of humanity's artificial worlds. The Coalition force included vessels from all 12 member species, representing the combined military might of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Admiral Zeltoth's message to humanity was broadcast across the Genesis Zone. "Humans of Earth, you have violated galactic law by engaging in unauthorized stellar engineering. You will cease all construction activities immediately and submit to Coalition oversight, or face the consequences of your defiance." Jake's response was broadcast back to the Coalition fleet and to every human in the Genesis Zone. "Admiral Zeltoth, humanity rejects your authority over our construction project. We are building in unclaimed space using resources that belong to no one, threatening no inhabited worlds. We will not stop." The first shots were fired by the Coalition fleet as they attempted to destroy one of humanity's stellar engines. But the humans had prepared for this moment. As the enemy ships approached the engine, Alex Thompson activated the gravitational traps that had been built into the galaxy's very structure. The Coalition ships found themselves caught in gravity wells that pulled them toward the artificial worlds where humanity's weapons waited. Ships that had seemed invincible in open space were helpless against weapons platforms that could use entire planets as their foundation. Nicole Brooks led the human fleet in hit-and-run attacks against the confused Coalition forces. Her ships knew exactly where every gravity well was located. Every artificial world was positioned. Every stellar engine could be used as a weapon. The Coalition fleet was fighting not just human ships but an entire galaxy that had been designed as both home and fortress. The battle raged across multiple star systems as the Coalition forces tried to adapt to fighting in space that had been completely reshaped by human engineering. Admiral Zeltoth found his fleet scattered and confused, unable to use their superior numbers effectively in the maze of gravity wells and defensive positions that humanity had created. Crystal Lord Menthar demanded that more ships be sent from Coalition space, but the losses were already mounting. Ships that approached the stellar engines were destroyed by energy beams powerful enough to move stars. Fleets that tried to attack the artificial worlds found themselves trapped by gravitational forces and overwhelmed by defensive weapons. Jake watched the battle from the command center, coordinating the defense of humanity's greatest achievement. Every star in their galaxy had been personally chosen and positioned by human hands. Every world had been built according to human dreams. They were not just defending territory, they were defending the right of humanity to build their own future among the stars. Dr. Carter stood beside him, her face reflecting both pride and sadness as she watched the destruction. "They forced us to turn our galaxy into a fortress," she said quietly. "We wanted to build something beautiful, and they made us build something deadly." "We built both," Jake replied. "And now they're learning what happens when you tell humanity they don't belong somewhere." The Coalition fleet began to retreat after losing over a third of their ships in the first day of fighting. The survivors limped back toward Coalition space, carrying news of humanity's unexpected victory to the species that had once dismissed them as too primitive for galactic civilization. In the Genesis Zone, humanity began repairing the damage from the battle while continuing their construction work. They had proven that their galaxy could defend itself, but they knew the Coalition would return with larger forces and better strategies. The war for humanity's right to build their own galaxy had begun, and the first victory belonged to the species that had been told they had no place among the stars. 3 years after the first Coalition attack, Admiral Nicole Brooks stood on the bridge of her flagship Victory and watched the last enemy ships retreat into hyperspace. The final battle had lasted 18 hours and covered 3 star systems, but humanity had won decisively. The Coalition fleet was broken, scattered, and fleeing back to their own galaxy with news of their complete defeat. The war had changed both sides forever. The Coalition had sent 3 separate invasion fleets, each larger than the last, but humanity's constructed galaxy had proven impossible to conquer. Every star was a weapon, every artificial world was a fortress, and every human ship knew exactly how to use the galaxy's defenses to maximum advantage. Jake Morrison, now promoted to Supreme Commander of Human Forces, received the Coalition's HFY surrender aboard their remaining flagship Cosmic Dominion. Fleet Admiral Zeltoth, the being who had demanded humanity's submission 3 years ago, now stood defeated in his own command center as Jake read the terms of the peace treaty. The Galactic Coalition acknowledges humanity's right to construct and inhabit their chosen region of space, Jake announced. Coalition forces will withdraw from all human territory immediately and will not interfere with ongoing construction projects. But the treaty included terms that would have seemed impossible when humanity was first rejected 50 years ago. The Coalition was requesting formal diplomatic relations with humanity. They wanted to establish trade agreements. Some species were even asking for permission to study human stellar engineering techniques. Dr. Lisa Carter, now elderly but still sharp, smiled as she watched the ceremony from the observation deck. The species that had once called humanity too primitive to join their galactic community was now asking to learn from human technology. The greatest irony was that humanity's rejection had led them to surpass their former judges in every measure of scientific achievement. The completed human galaxy was a marvel that attracted visitors from across the universe. Captain Danny Miller, who had started as a mining coordinator and was now director of galactic tourism, welcomed delegations from dozens of species who came to study human engineering and see the artificial worlds that had become legendary throughout known space. HFY, capital world of New Terra, orbited a carefully chosen yellow star at the exact center of the galaxy. The world itself was a work of art, with continents shaped like geometric patterns and oceans that reflected the light of nearby stars in spectacular displays. The city of Genesis, built at the planet's equator, housed the government of humanity's first galactic civilization. Admiral Jake Morrison, now in his 80s, walked through the streets of Genesis and marveled at what humanity had accomplished. Children played in parks beneath skies that showed stars arranged in patterns that no natural galaxy had ever displayed. These children would grow up thinking it was normal for stars to be positioned exactly where they belonged, for planets to be built to perfect specifications, for entire galaxies to be designed like gardens. Alex Thompson had become the galaxy's chief engineer, overseeing the construction of new star systems and the maintenance of the stellar engines that kept everything in perfect position. His teams had mastered the art of moving stars so completely that they could relocate an entire solar system in less than a year. Dr. Kevin Matthews led the Galactic Planning Council, using quantum computers to design new sections of the galaxy and calculate the gravitational effects of adding more stars. His latest project was a second galaxy that would be built in a nearby void, connected to the first by a bridge of carefully positioned stars. Amy Richardson had become famous throughout the universe as the creator of the most beautiful worlds ever built. Her artificial planets were studied by artists and scientists from hundreds of species. Each world she designed was a perfect environment for its intended purpose, from the vast agricultural worlds that fed the galaxy to the research planets, where humanity's greatest scientists made discoveries that pushed the boundaries of knowledge. The population of the human galaxy had grown to over 10 billion people scattered across 2,000 worlds. Some lived on the artificial planets that Amy designed, others on the massive habitat rings that surrounded the stars, and still others on the space stations that served as waypoints for travelers moving between star systems. Nicole Brooks, now an admiral in charge of galactic defense, commanded a fleet that had become the most respected military force in known space. Human ships were welcome in Coalition territory, not as conquered enemies but as honored allies. The same species that had once called humans too violent now requested human military advisors to help defend their own worlds. But the greatest achievement was not military or technological. It was the simple fact that humanity had created a home that was entirely their own. Every star in their galaxy had been personally chosen and moved into position by human hands. Every world had been built according to human dreams and human needs. Every trade route, every defensive position, every beautiful view had been planned and constructed by humans who refused to accept limitations imposed by others. Jake stood in his office in the Galactic Council building, looking out at a view that never failed to amaze him. The night sky showed stars arranged in perfect spirals and geometric patterns, with artificial worlds glowing like jewels in the darkness. In the distance, the construction lights of new stellar engines marked where work crews were adding another star system to humanity's growing galaxy. A message arrived from the Coalition capital announcing that humanity had been invited to join the Galactic Coalition as an equal member. The same organization that had rejected humanity 50 years ago was now asking them to become leaders in galactic civilization. Lisa Carter, now Director Emeritus of Project Genesis, came to Jake's office to discuss the Coalition's offer. Her hair was white with age, but her eyes still sparkled with the intelligence and determination that had started humanity's greatest adventure. "They want us to join their club now," she said with a smile. "The question is whether we want to join." Jake looked out at their galaxy, where millions of humans were living lives that their ancestors could never have imagined. Children born on artificial worlds built around stars that humanity had moved into position. Scientists making discoveries on research planets designed specifically for their work. Artists creating masterpieces inspired by views that no natural world had ever offered. "We already have our own club," he replied. "The question is whether we want to let them join ours." The decision was made by vote of every human citizen in the galaxy. The results were overwhelming. Humanity would accept the Coalition as junior partners in a new galactic alliance, but the terms would be set by human civilization. Young space engineer Ben Foster and pilot training graduate Kate Wilson represented the new generation of humans who had grown up in the constructed galaxy. They were part of the team planning humanity's third galaxy, which would be built entirely by people who had never lived on a natural world. Ben looked at the star charts, showing empty space where they would build their next galactic home. "My grandfather helped move the first stars when he was young. Now we're planning to build an entire galaxy cluster." Kate nodded as she studied the gravitational calculations. "The Coalition species are asking if they can help with the construction. They want to learn how to build their own artificial galaxies." Jake smiled as he listened to the young engineers discuss their plans. Humanity had gone from being rejected by galactic civilization to leading it. They had proven that when the universe says no, the proper human response is to build your own universe. The galaxy they had built was more than a home. It was proof that humanity could accomplish anything they set their minds to. They had taken empty space and filled it with stars arranged in patterns more beautiful than anything nature had ever created. They had built worlds more perfect than any natural planet. They had created a civilization that spanned thousands of star systems, all positioned exactly where they belonged. As Jake walked home through the streets of Genesis, he passed monuments to the humans who had died building their galaxy. stellar engine crews who had been lost in accidents, construction workers who had given their lives to move stars into position, soldiers who had defended humanity's right to build their own future. But he also passed schools where children learned to design star systems, workshops where engineers built machines that could reshape space itself, and art galleries displaying paintings of sunsets from a dozen different artificial worlds. The coalition had been right about one thing: humanity did not belong in their galaxy. Humans belonged in their own galaxy, built with their own hands, according to their own dreams. They had learned the greatest lesson of all, that the proper response to being told you have no place somewhere is to build your own place and make it better than anywhere else in the universe.